What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Salt and Light Podcast, the number one podcast in South Portland, Maine, maybe.
That's right.
Probably.
What part of South Portland are we in? East South Portland?
South.
No, we're not in South Portland.
I have no idea.
I think we're in East South Portland. No, West South Portland, because we're over by Westbrook. Anyway, the part of South Portland we're in Clark's Pond Plaza. That's where the best podcast in Clark's Pond.
Until Rabbit Trails takes off.
Yeah.
But no one knows about it yet.
But that's something else.
We got a special guest today.
Yeah, we do.
Because we have no Kurt or Keenan, which are usually the driving factors. Yeah.
Yeah, they are usually the ones to fill in the majority of the talking time. So Adam and I are going to have to pick it up today.
But we got Jake Tallman.
Hey, Jake.
Oh, hey, guys.
I wish I had an applause sound effect. I only have a sad trombone sound effect.
I'd love to say I'm so happy to be here, but you just said that we don't have the two people who normally drive, so we just picked up somebody who was in the
That's
halls.
not what I meant.
No, I'm super excited to be here. Big fan of the podcast.
Long time listener.
Oh, really? Wow.
Long time listener. First time guest.
I'm glad.
Yeah, Jake, I feel like, you've been around for a while. You jive pretty well with Adam and I, so it just makes sense that you're here.
Hey,
so welcome.
I'm pumped. I'll do my best. But I'm excited.
That's all we can ask.
So I'll dive in with a question for you guys as we start.
Okay.
But kind of what I wanted to talk about today was, one of the things we could talk about is discipleship. And I feel like that's a term that isn't as commonly used in our culture, is to disciple someone. But the question I wanted to ask you guys, yes, Christianese, it's like a different language.
Yeah.
The question I wanted to ask you guys was, who is someone in your life that stands out to you, who's discipled you, and how did they go about it? What was it like? What was that relationship like? Adam, you go first.
I'll go first. I would probably say most of the youth pastors that I've had have...
really?
I'm going to take my headphones off.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, going to get a little more immersive.
Wow. Adam's taking his headphones off. He never does that.
Well, I don't like the sound of how my voice sounds in it.
Really?
Yeah,
there's
sounds
scientific
really weird.
evidence that shows there's reasons for that.
Yeah, it's kind of
What's
disgusting.
the reason for that?
We're just going to rabbit trail right off the bat?
Let's rabbit trail on that real quick, because I need to know, because I feel like I hate the sound of my own voice.
Isn't it because you're used to how your voice sounds when it's going through your bones and stuff into your ears?
Yeah, yeah.
So then when you hear it externally, it's like disgusting.
So it's super fascinating, and I would only be able to pick up some of the bullet points, but basically when you hear your own voice, it's coming through it's like multiple avenues, so it's like stereo sound, where you get the out loud sound, which everybody else hears, but then that's mixed with all of the resonance that comes through all of your sinuses, your facial bones, and your body's literally made...
Your inner ear probably a little bit?
Yeah, your inner ear. It goes through everything.
We're like speakers for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. And so your body is literally made to make it sound ideal. And so you listen to that all the time, your whole life. And then everybody, when they first hear their voice, on a recording or whatever, it's just awful. Everyone hates it. But
is that why when I sing, I get goosebumps, but everyone else shrieks and runs away?
I think that would be the opposit of that. But yeah,
I love it when I sing.
Oh, you do?
I think I sound great, but then
maybe that's
Magdalene's
narcissism.
It could be but what you're saying is we're built to be narcissists.
Yes, part of probably. But then what's even crazier than that is there's something, how have you ever heard of if your vision gets messed up in one eye, your body makes up for it over time, and then you can adapt to it.
Right.
Well, it's the same thing with the audible side of your brain, where if you hear your voice out loud or on a recording for a long enough period of time, mostly musicians who hear themselves sing a lot, your mind starts to make up the difference in the gap and make somewhere in between. So you get used when they say you get used to hearing your own voice out loud.
Wow.
There's truth to that. It's crazy. I saw it on a podcast one.
That's really interesting.
That's amazing.
Well, if you enjoyed that little rabbit trail,
Jake, you remind me
rabbit trails.
Uno.
Jake, you remind me a lot of myself in the sense that you have a lot of random factual knowledge or semi-factual knowledge.
Humble brag.
That needs a lot of footnotes to it, because I like listening to a lot of
really smart. Basically, what I heard.
Well, do you remember last year when I stopped you and Taylor for like 30 minutes in the student lounge, and I had to tell you guys about how the human mouth has shrank over the past 500 years.
I actually do.
Yeah.
I was
Because our
preparing to
diet
make fun
is
of you
more
for
soft.
asking me that, but I do remember.
Yeah, you can grow about a quarter's worth of bone in your face if you use a certain extender thing that they have over time. Like it pushes.
I don't
Basically
think I
your
want any
palate
more
outward.
bone in my face.
I don't know why people would want that necessarily, but yeah, it's the one area of your body that can grow more bone. I don't know why I couldn't get that in like my legs.
I know.
Because I was talking to somebody this morning. I said, it's funny how they make like steroids that you can grow stronger, like muscle wise,
but not taller.
but there's nothing out there that can make you taller.
Just
but
2
it would
inches.
probably be way more abused than steroids.
That, and I think the only way to do it is you'd have to like continuously break your bones to like have them like make up calcium deposits.
I thought the same
fill in
thing.
Yeah,
gaps.
that's not worth it.
No, not for like a over time. You get like 2 millimeters after
Yeah.
like
Right.
40 broken bones.
Oh, did you guys ever had growing pains when you grew up? Like where your legs hurt?
No.
Not like growing pains, like metaphorically, but like literally growing pains.
Not
It
that I'm
happens
aware
when you're
of.
like 3, so I don't recall.
Oh, really? I know a lot of people that like when they're like 10 to
that's-
14 had growing pains
You're
that
100% right.
toss and turn. I'm sure you had them when you were also a baby and you were teething as well, but I can't remember that personally. Sprouting all those new teeth.
Anyways,
Jake, what does
I
growing
believe you
pains
asked
look
me a
like for you on
question.
a spiritual level?
Oh, that's a redirection right back to the topic.
Wow.
eventually I'll talk about this discipleship.
Yeah, should we come full circle back to you, Adam?
Oh, sure. You don't want to. You just asked a question. You don't
No,
wanna-
I know. It was more of a kind of a joke, like
Yeah,
pastory.
we'll shelf it.
It was kind of a pastory
Let's
joke.
hear about your
Shelf
youth
it.
leaders.
Okay. Well, first of all, a quick shout out. Check out Rabbit Trails wherever you listen to podcasts if you enjoyed that little segment. But anyways, yes, any of my youth pastors I would say were key in discipling me. Josh Fournier, too.
Wow, shout out to Josh
has had a
Fournier.
lot of impact on many different directions that I could have gone in my life that led me to here.
Mhm.
And I'm thankful for that.
In the worst alternative universe, what is Adam doing right now?
I don't want to talk bad about any other church that I may or may not have been working at. So
Oh, wow. So that's what you'd be doing in the worst alternative universe?
In the worst alternative universe, he's
So,
working
like,
at
I
another-
thought
if
you
there's
meant in
like-
the alternative universe that I was referring to about
No, I meant like as a
Oh.
joke, like you were like, he helped me, he redirected me from a lot of things.
Oh,
like,
I don't
bad
know where I
things
would
and-
be in the worst alternative universe. That's a good question.
Mm.
What do you think about that?
I feel like you'd have an eye patch for sure.
community
That's the
you'd
worst.
probably be riding around on a Harley Davidson.
Would I have a monocle in
And-
my other eye?
I think you would be like, not stopping for pedestrians and stuff like that,
Yeah.
personally. And I think you,
I'd
instead of-
probably have a machine gun.
I think you'd be in a rock and roll band. But like,
That's in a good alternative
no,
universe.
I think it would be like a bad one though.
A bad band.
It would be like,
Nobody listens to us.
it wouldn't be like God uplifting. It wouldn't be like glorifying to the Lord.
Oh.
That's an
But
interesting thought. Real
Thank
quick.
the Lord.
You said like in the complete opposite worst universe. It's so crazy how many decisions we make in our life. Like, isn't it like 100? You make like 100 decisions every day or something
Probably,
like that.
at least.
Imagine
At least
like
3.
Imagine in like, I'm 32, whatever. Imagine you made the worst out of 2 decisions, every decision,
Wow.
every day. I think you die by like the time you're like
Oh, probably.
6 or maybe even before that.
Maybe,
if you
yeah.
just made like the
That
worst
is
decisions
fascinating.
every time. It's kind of impossible to think of that.
Dude,
That's fascinating.
thank the Lord for our guardian angels. Am I right?
Yeah. Come on.
Believe in that. That's a subject for a different time. So that's awesome. So Josh Fournier really kind of influenced you and helped you out. How old were you when he was
When I was
discipling
born.
you?
Just kidding.
4 years old. How old is Josh?
Probably when he had some impact when I was in high school because he was one of my youth pastors here with Steve. But I'd say mostly when I was considering doing an internship here after graduation. I was either going to do an internship here or do a residency at Manchester Christian Church. And he, even though that would have been paid, the internship's unpaid. I also felt like it might have been better for me to move out and be on my own, like in that way.
Yep.
But Josh called me on the day that I had to make the decision to Manchester.
Wow.
And was telling me that he just felt like I should do the internship here. And that he didn't really know why. Which I think clearly was
he had no
I
reason
can't really
why.
say that because I don't know.
I have no bias towards East Point at all, but I really feel like you should do internship
right.
here.
Yeah, totally.
I don't know why.
Well, because he was in agreement with me of my reasons why I felt like I should do the other thing, but I'm thankful for that. And then he also was the one that he called me last year when I was working at Falmouth Elementary School and told me about Scott Layton leaving and that he might be able to get me a residency in video. And I already had a job offer I was going to accept a job at Life Church over in Gorham. But he called me with that, and that definitely felt like the right thing to do. And that's the only reason I have this job right now is because of that. So he definitely has had an impact on where I have ended up.
So he's basically
So far.
your puppet master, and he's tugged this down.
Yeah. I'm on strings.
So he's helped you with some big life decisions. That's important.
Yeah.
Giving you some counsel and wisdom.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jake, what about you? Who comes to your mind as far as someone who's discipled you in your life?
Yeah, I think I've had lots of people pouring into my life in different ways all along, as we all have. Someone who always comes to mind when this question gets brought up is Carrie Escott.
Oh, nice.
So for like you guys, I think know most of my story about us being part of the church for a while, but not really living, all in our relationship, both personally, our personal relationship with Jesus, as well as our involvement in ministry in the church. And then when I got, I think it's like 10 years now ago, but like when we got plugged in and I joined the worship team, I had like no business, even like being part of that team or anything like that. But Carrie and Josh were encouraging and saw something that, I definitely didn't at the time. And then I think over years of like close friendship, really, it was like a relational ministry, just being a good friend. And then like the accountability, I guess I really don't love the term I see in you conversations, but they certainly have their place. Like that's what she was doing. She just like would see
biblical encouragement.
Yeah, biblical encouragement. She would see like different ways
like Paul fanning the flame of Timothy.
Fanning the flame. There you go. There's some Christianese.
Come on, let's go.
But
fan that flame.
I see that hand.
I see it.
Yeah. So it'd be like lots of different opportunities with like leading devotionals or encouraging our team and just calling me up into like a little bit more leadership. And I think through the sense of, responsibility of, wow, I'm being asked to lead these people as in, parallel, I was certainly going deeper and developing my relationship with Jesus a lot during that time period as well. But I think the accountability of having responsibility to lead others really just kind of impacted how seriously I took, I can't lead someone to a place that I'm not.
Yes.
And we talk about 100%. That a lot. And so she was just instrumental in keeping a pulse on that, really encouraging me through those moments, that season. And I certainly wouldn't be where I am today without any of that. And then, how it kind of hands off from season to season. But yeah, I think, we were just talking the other day about Christian evangelism, not like to the outside unbelieving world, but like how we have to evangelize to one another in a way of like calling each other to something deeper and really encouraging. And we just see that in Acts, we see it in the early church, but I think sometimes we, get so busy and so overwhelmed with what we got to do. We're like, no, they're good. They're Christians already. They're good.
Right,
I gotta just let them do their thing. I gotta do my thing. And then, man, that makes us weak, like super, super vulnerable.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, in that season of my life, I didn't experience that. I was surrounded by people who were helping me and discipling me.
Yeah, thank God for that, because I feel like a huge part of discipling somebody else is helping them see themselves the way that God sees them. And it takes a level of, encouragement and the ability to see through somebody's kind of rough edges, or not where they're, like, I guess trying to see what they can become, like who they can be, I kind of worded that really badly, but someone that comes to my mind that did that for me was Ron Castens for my first internship. And I was 21, and he really encouraged me a lot. And I noticed for me in ministry, one of my biggest setbacks was my own self-esteem and not having the confidence that I wanted to have to do things. And he was really encouraging, and he would like really push me into different ministry things. Like I remember one evening we had like a prayer night, and he had me lead the whole thing and set up prayer stations, and he just kept giving me the keys to different ministry things in the church. He had me lead a small group, and then he let me preach my first sermon in front of a church at his church at Crossway down in Nashua. And for me, I was like really nervous / also like I was like really surprised that he would let me do that as a 21-year-old intern who had really never preached in front of a congregation before. But even through that process, like he helped me work on my message. He listened to it in the auditorium, like had me go on the stage and preach it. And he was the only one in the auditorium, and he gave me feedback and encouragement. And he even like took me to like pastoral calls. Like when we went to someone's house who was sick, and we prayed over them. And I remember another time he had me sit in and be a fly on the wall during a marriage counseling session that he had with a couple in the church. And as I look back on it, I'm like, that's kind of awkward being that couple. Like, this is Graham. He's just going to sit here
apprentice
and watch.
Well, like the reality is like, when would be the best time? Like, what if you were like 28, but you'd never done it? It's like, that doesn't make any more sense.
Right.
It doesn't change anything. You have to, like,
it really doesn't.
Trial by fire.
Yeah. And if you think about like the medical system, like that's how it is. Like if, the doctor has his interns and residents that follow him, and usually the doctor will walk in and someone's kind of shadowing and watching, and he goes, this is so-and-so, this is my intern. He's just going to watch as I do some things, and he might step in. Is that okay with you, Jake? And so you're like, I hope so, if they know what they're doing.
Being in that world.
And then their hands won't stop shaking.
Should I be okay with it?
I remember there was a resident during our first labor with Kana, and she helped with the delivery. It was I think one of her first labors that she's ever done, because I could tell her eyes were so wide. She was so nervous, and I was like, this girl better know what she's doing here, but that's what it kind of takes.
It does, and you'd never have doctors if you didn't have people like who learned and went and did it all.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's a crazy.
So it sounds to me like part of discipleship is seeing something in the person that you're discipling that they don't see in themselves through encouragement, and then helping them stretch outside of their comfort zone in order to grow into that person that God wants them to be.
Yeah.
I feel like I worded that better than that.
Good job.
Nice.
Steve Yescott had a good system of, and it's not his system, it's just a system, but he would, it was 4 stages, and it would be like, if I'm the expert or whatever, and you're learning the thing that I'm
you're
teaching.
Nothing. You know nothing.
Yeah, just like in real life.
I'm the blank slate.
Right. I'll do it all, and you'll watch me.
Right.
And then I'll do it, and you'll help me, and then you'll do it, and I'll help you, and then you do it.
Yep.
And then
Good
and he was good at doing that, and not just like letting us be comfortable, me and Taylor specifically, when we were doing the internship, not just letting us be comfortable with him doing everything, which would have been really easy to do, because he had been a youth pastor for however many, 1,000 years or whatever, right?
I think, yeah.
Some of the stuff you can do so much easier than it would be to try to teach it. But
so in the discipleship process, though, I mean, that makes a ton of sense as far as helping people be more equipped to do the work of the ministry. But how do you help someone in discipleship just become more like Christ and from the inside out? Because I think if we're not careful, what a culture of discipleship can look like is people like telling others what to do, or it can become very action oriented, which is not bad. It could become legalistic, but if you're not careful, there's no heart behind it. Because I think of like the church ministry that my parents were discipled in Boston, and a big problem they had with that ministry was it was very works based, and so discipleship for them was that you meet someone, you have them over the house, you have them over at Bible study, you baptize them, and then you help them make another disciple from start to finish. And there was a conference
Seems
where,
fast.
yeah, well, and there was a conference where their lead pastor was like, "Hey, if you have made a disciple this past year, go ahead and raise your hand. And if you haven't, I want you to go sit at the feet of the people who have raised their hands."
Whoa, that's
Yeah.
weird.
I'm raising my hand.
And
in
so
that
my parents
situation
were
regardless.
like, yeah, I made like 8 disciples,
Totally did, guys.
That's super weird.
but it was very works based. It was
Yeah.
very outwardly based. And I think we should definitely have some like parameters if we're not bearing the marks of discipleship and what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in our life. But at the same time, how do you help someone just love the Lord and be filled with the Spirit in that way?
Yeah, we've been having this conversation quite a bit in different capacities, and it's a hard question to answer because it's so individual to the person. And like the only person who can help you encounter Jesus on a deeper level is you. Like you can't make enough to-dos to make it happen. You can't have enough accountability to like scare them into it or like harp them into it. But I think a big part of it is, one, it's relational. So you gotta like the person you're discipling or, you know, walking with, they need to know like that you love them like deeply. And then from there, that allows for accountability in certain areas. But then a big part of it, I think, is so much of experiencing things yourself as you walk with Jesus and sharing those. Because like how many times, even as I sit with you guys, like when you have those conversations about what following Jesus looks like, what the Spirit's doing, what God's doing, you can't help leave a conversation like that just like super jazzed.
Yeah, you're buzzing.
Like you're ready to go. And I think if we're only talking about struggles or we're only talking about, you know, hardships, and we're not talking about like the joy of following Jesus together, that we're not going to be motivated to do that. And I think the more and more we can encourage each other in that way is a big part of discipleship. But it's intentional. It takes time to do it for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And I feel like part of it too is making that a priority in your discipleship when you're chatting with someone, is showing them that ultimately God wants their hearts way more than he wants their habits or their actions or anything like that. And that's the priority, is
All the other
having
stuff,
a relationship.
all the other stuff kind of comes. Like,
exactly.
you know, the fruit, like you can't be following Jesus and, you know, the word abiding. You can't be abiding in Jesus and not produce fruit. It just doesn't work. But you can fake producing fruit and not be abiding in Jesus, and it doesn't go anywhere. Like you can force it for a while, but in the way it should be, it just happens organically, like without trying. And that's just a huge, huge difference.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I guess I think you have to have that. I don't think you have to, but I think it really helps in discipleship that if you have that overflowing love for the Lord in your own life, and the person you're talking to can really like see that in your eyes as you're talking about your relationship with Jesus, and you're talking about your quiet time, and you're talking about how the Lord is speaking to you. I think that encourages the other person to be like, oh, I want that in my life. I just know for me, like growing up, I had I had the amazing blessing of having my dad, you know, who many people know as Pastor Larry, and he just loves the Lord so much. And I remember even waking up, you know, as a 13-year-old, coming downstairs at 7 a.m. and watching my dad walking up the driveway after just going for a prayer walk. And the couple of times I'd go out with him if I could wake up early enough to join him. And he would pray. And I remember just listening to him pray and go, wow, like it's like God's right here with us, you know? And that kind of stuff to me is kind of like it's been said, it's not just taught, but it's caught, where you're like, okay, this is really real. And then it becomes more and more real for yourself, because I remember hearing a bunch of miraculous supernatural stuff happen in my dad's life and the ways that God has spoken to him. And part of me was almost discouraged by it, because growing up I was like, man, I want that. And I'd compare my story to his story. But now that I feel like I'm more in a healthy way removed from my dad, as I'm becoming more of a man myself, getting there.
Good for you. I'm proud of you, Graham.
For you.
I just feel like I'm starting to experience the Lord in more and more real ways for me, because I'm not riding on his coattails any longer. And
nobody
like,
can follow Jesus for you. That's for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is for sure.
I think sometimes we want that though.
Oh,
and it's our propensity.
It's way easier if someone else does it for you.
I think the disciples literally wanted that. They're like, when Jesus was with them, you know, they're like, don't leave. We want you here all the time.
Can you imagine
can we
feeling
just do
like,
nothing?
can you imagine feeling like equipped and like good enough to do something? Like you're like looking over your shoulder and Jesus is watching you as you're about to like call a demon out of somebody, be like, can you just do it?
How awful would that be if
I forget the words.
You're going into an
forget the
exorcism and you
combination.
just look over your shoulder and Jesus is just kind of giggling a little.
Yeah,
That'd be
like,
the worst.
He's like shaking his head.
No, what, Jesus, you just step in. You
He's
do
like
this.
face palming. Like, I'm trying
Well,
my best.
Hey, that
here.
was a great try, Jake. Pats you on the back.
Well, I mean, to like Adam's point where he was talking about like in youth ministry with like Steve, you know, and him and Taylor would like do things, but he was there. And so he had to be very intentional about like getting them to do it, because it'd be way easier to watch him do it. I mean, I can't even imagine being a disciple and ever feeling adequate. We're not adequate. That is the truth. And that's the reality you have to kind of come to. But I can't imagine like walking with him and ever feeling like, you know what, Jesus, you relax. I'll take this one.
Right.
Yeah. That's bad news.
That's
if you've
bad.
reached
Yeah.
that.
But the reality is we have the Spirit, which is Jesus in us. So
That's right.
we can do it like he's here.
Mhm.
But it's hard to live that. It's hard to live like
I
that.
think that's
Takes
something
trust.
that kind of always is holding us back, is like assuming that the people that are mentors for us feel adequate, and that if I don't feel adequate, then I'm clearly not there yet or close to being there yet. But I feel like nobody really probably feels adequate.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just negative on yourself to think that way.
That, and I think the feeling of adequacy doesn't always last as long as we want it to. Like, I think we all have moments where we feel like an imposter, and I think it can be a good thing if we allow it to be something that we use to lean into the Lord and go, I can't do this in my own strength, God. I am an imposter without you, you know? Because that speaks to me. I mean, there's so many times growing up or just in ministry where I'm like, oh, I feel like a little bit of a phony here. Because God is kind of stretching me beyond what I feel qualified for, even though I know in a lot of ways, like I've done the schooling, I know the head knowledge, but I'm like, am I really big enough to fill these shoes here that I've been put in? And then the Lord just constantly reminds me, no, but I am. And with my Spirit, I'll make you strong. Where you're weak, I'll make you strong. And I think that's what we have to continue to remind ourselves of, because I don't know if that ever goes away.
Right.
Because I think some of the most confident people, they have those pockets of insecurity inside of them.
Yeah.
Where they're like, I'm doing well right now, I'm performing, but if people really knew how I actually felt on the inside, then they might not be as
Well, that's the
impressed.
difference. I think when you, as a follower of Jesus, your confidence has to be in like Jesus doing those things and not in you, because you're going to waver and fall. When we were just recently, when we were at the Orange Conference, there was a speaker that said something that like is so true that I really connected with it. And she said like, the comparison culture that we're in right now, especially amplified with social media. But she said, even not on social media, but in real life, you see other people's best, but you know all of your worst.
Yeah. Right.
So exactly. It's like you analyze, even in following Jesus, like you would look at your own walk and know every time you didn't pray, every time you had a sinful thought, every time you struggled with something, but you don't see that in other Christians. You see what you see.
Exactly.
And so you can just, if you allow comparison to give you or take away your confidence, that's a bad scenario coming.
Yeah, and I think most of us have the propensity to discount the positive in ourselves as well. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we saw ourselves kind of through other people's eyes, we might be more encouraged. But oftentimes, at least for myself, I see all of my flaws and all the things that are negative.
Oh, of course,
and I critique myself, and
we all see your
flaws. So I think we all see your flaws.
You guys see them too?
No.
Oh no. I was thinking it's like the opposite of the voice thing. Like your voice sounds better in your head.
Right. Yeah.
But then when you hear it, you're like, bad. But then sometimes I'll be like, ooh, that wasn't good. And then I'll watch something back and I'll be like, okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought, you know?
Yeah.
Yep.
So sometimes you can be more critical, or someone else be like, I didn't notice that. You know, it's like the piano recital thing. You're like, I made so many mistakes. And they're like, oh, it sounded good to me.
Notice, right.
You know, sometimes the worship team will come off stage and be like, oh, we messed up a couple times. And I'll be like, really? I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
So,
I always tell Anna about all the mistakes I made, all the chords that I played wrong, or
oh, really?
That one note that I meant to sing a little different. It was a little flat or whatever.
Yeah. Unless your voice just cracks horribly, probably not many people will.
Right.
And notice. Worship is like its own world in particular, like worship music and like for you, and it's like the more into that space you get where you're analyzing kind of like performance over like experience, then it's like a whole nother lane and road of going down something really unhealthy, because you can start to analyze like, well, was worship powerful because we were good, or we made mistakes, so we, it wasn't powerful. And it's like the Spirit of God is so much more powerful than like our performance of, a song with 4 chords in it. It's not a big deal.
Right. But sometimes 5.
Yeah. You get some real spicy 6 ones, but no, I think and that was something like Carrie helped me really grow in, as we talk about like discipleship with worship leading in particular, is, you have that comparison of, well, this person's a really good singer. I'm not as good of a singer as them. And so therefore my worship isn't as good as theirs. And that's not true necessarily.
Exactly. I think that's a misconception we have in the kingdom, is that we think effectiveness looks polished. Sometimes and I think that we get that from our culture to a degree, is, if you want to be effective, it needs to be polished. But the reality is, oftentimes I think some of the most effective things they're not like horribly rough around the edges, but they're oftentimes not super shiny and polished.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've even noticed that for myself. If I give a message, sometimes I'll be like, oh, I didn't really stumble on my words, or whatever it might be, or didn't really make too many mistakes, or I stuck to what I felt like was on my notes. And then people are like, that was pretty good, and I'm like, looking around,
and then you have like one that you feel horrible about, and everyone's like,
and
that was awesome.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Jonah walking through,
come on,
the Assyrian town, and he's like, says 3 words, and everyone repents in sackcloth and ash. And the funny thing is, we think it has so much to do with what we're saying and our performance, when God's like, no, I don't really need that at all.
I've shared the story before, but God like super convicted me of it one Sunday. It was years and years ago now, but it was in this building though. And I was personally struggling with that like idea of performance over genuine worship. And I actually wasn't on that Sunday, so I wasn't part of the team, but I was in the congregation and I was worshiping, and there's this guy like 2 rows ahead of me that was a horrible singer.
Oh, no.
From like
Oh,
the world's
belting it out.
He was belting it. He was it was so loud and a little distracting, but I obviously with how loud and distracting it was, it like caught my attention. And in that moment, God was like, his voice to God might be the most beautiful sound in this place. And you have no right to judge his heart of worship from where you're sitting.
Right.
And I just like remembered, I even stopped singing. I just like went quiet, and I just had a really impactful moment with God where he kind of healed a lot of that insecurities around performance for me in that moment, listening to somebody who from the world standards could not sing at all.
Right.
And I just often think about that when I'm getting prepared to lead someone in worship. It was really impactful.
We could have a whole nother episode about that stuff.
Yeah.
The balance between professionalism and like obviously
And heartfelt.
God wants our best.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't settle, right? But then also we shouldn't beat ourselves up if it's like what you're saying.
Yeah, our best is our best. It might not be.
There's definitely a balance there,
for sure.
which is tough.
Yeah. I think sometimes it really has to do with our expectations of what we feel like we're expected to do. I know for myself, that's where a lot of my performance can come from, is it needs to be this way, when God's expectations may be completely different from ours of what he is looking for in a really good worship time. Our expectations might be like, the music's got to be like sound really good. Like we all have to be like perfect pitch or whatever it might be, and not a lot of distractions. And it's going to be in this time frame, which all those things aren't bad, but what is God really? What's his priority out of our worship time?
You could be the most talented singer and instrumentalist, but if the authenticity isn't there, it's worthless.
Exactly.
So true.
It's not going to make dead bones rise.
Come on.
If you could all see the way Graham's smiling right now,
You would have thrown up. Well, I think it's about time to wrap it up.
Isn't that time?
Yeah, it's that time. Well, thanks for listening, guys. Jake, thanks for being on
Thank
the
you
Jake,
podcast.
so
this
much for
was
having me.
awesome.
We appreciate your debut episode.
I appreciate it.
If
Hopefully,
you prefer Jake, just
email me at
email-
Please don't do that.
adam@eastpoint.church.
email
Please
us
don't do
and
that.
just let us know. And
Yeah.
this could be the new dynamic if
Yeah.
that's what you want.
Yep.
Or if you want to just get rid of Adam and I, let us know. We'll
Yeah.
ignore that email, probably delete it immediately.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not going to make the mistake that Keenan made last week of hitting the outro button again after it went through.
Oh, he
It
double
has
tapped.
been over for a bit, but I'm not going to hit it again. So, see you next week.